The Shanghai Walking Audio Tour was created to give you a brief overview of Shanghai's rich and turbulent past. The city's history has been broken up into 8 narratives. In an attempt to make the history more tangible, we have linked each historical narrative with at least one point of interest in Shanghai. You may have noticed that all tracks are labeled either Directions, History, or POI, which stands for Point of Interest. Notice the pattern of how the tracks are listed. The Directions track will always be listed first, followed by History, and ending with at least one point of interest. The direction tracks are detailed directions of the fastest route on how to reach the next designated point of interest. The history narrative is historical background information of Shanghai regarding the point of interest you are currently traveling to. The history narrative is meant to be played or listened to while following the directions, traveling to the next point of interest. The last track of the group will always be the point of interest track. The point of interest track is a narrative providing an informational description of significance and/or importance, linking the history narrative to the designated point of interest. After you have visited and listened to the designated point of interest track, the next track will be the directions track from the next point of interest, followed by another history narrative, ending with a point of interest narrative, and the pattern continues until you're finished with the walking tour. Unfortunately, many of the historical buildings, structures, and other various locations tied to Shanghai's opulent history have been eliminated and/or erased in the modernization of Shanghai. Due to the sprawling layout of Shanghai and the role the foreign concessions had on Shanghai's history, the remaining points of interest are spread out over long distances of the city. Please be patient while taking this tour and feel free to make and take as many breaks as possible. The walking tour will begin at Renmin Lu and Dajing Lu. The first location can easily be accessed from the Line 8, Line 10 Laoximen Station or Old West Gate Station and Line 8 Dashijie Station. Both of these metro stations are fairly close to the western part of the Dajing Tower. From the station exits, follow the signs to the Old City Wall or the intersection of Renmin Lu and Dajing Lu. Up until the 7th century AD, Shanghai itself was simply marshland. At that time, Shanghai was known as Shen or Hudu, named after local bamboo fishing traps. The character Hu still refers to Shanghai today, observable on Shanghai automobile license plates. During the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279 AD, Shanghai was upgraded in status from a village to a market town in 1074. And in 1172, a second sea wall was built to stabilize the ocean coastline, supplementing an earlier dike. From the Yuan Dynasty in 1292 until Shanghai officially became a city for the first time in 1297, the area was designated merely as a county, administered by the Songjiang Prefecture. In an aim to promote Shanghai's development during the Ming Dynasty, a city wall was built for the first time in 1553 in order to protect the town from raids by Japanese pirates. During the Qing Dynasty, Shanghai became one of the most important seaports in the Yangtze Delta region. In 1732, Emperor Yongzheng moved the customs office of Jiangsu province from the prefectural capital of Songjiang City to Shanghai, and gave Shanghai exclusive control over customs collections for Jiangsu province's foreign trade. By 1735, Shanghai had become the major trade port for the entire lower Yangtze River region, despite still being at the lowest administrative level in the political hierarchy. In the 1740s, Shanghai was headquarters for the Pirate Confederation of China, led by Mistress Qing. Most of eastern modern Shanghai did not exist until the 17th century, when a complex web of canals was designed to drain the region. The early settlement of Shanghai emerged at the union of the Shanghai River and Huangpu River. The Shanghai River has long since vanished.
In recent years, the population within the settlement has been constantly increasing. The foreigners have therefore demanded the extension of the settlement. From their point of view, this seems to be a reasonable demand, but during the last 20 years, the national conscientiousness of the Chinese has been rapidly growing, so they have never obtained the consent of the Chinese for the purposed extensions. I may say frankly that they will never obtain such consent in the future.
A quote by a Chinese citizen regarding the destruction of the old Shanghai Wall by newly appointed Shanghai Governor Chen Qimei for the purported purpose of freely expanding Shanghai beyond the confines of the old city. You are standing in what is currently known as the Huangpu district. However, in 1553, during the Ming Dynasty, Shanghai built a city wall to defend itself against Japanese pirates, known as Wukou. It is rumored that this city wall was built in only 2 months and was surrounded by a moat. The wall measured 27 feet high, was 3 miles around, and had 10 gates. All that remains today is 164 feet of wall at the intersection of Dajing Lu and Renmin Lu. The rest was pulled down in 1912. The visible section of the remaining wall dates to the Qing dynasty, as is evident by brick markings bearing the names of Qing emperors Qianfeng and Tongji. The newly rebuilt Dajing Pavilion atop the wall was one of the 30 towers along the structure. There's a small exhibit here on life in the old Chinese city. The City God Temple in Yuan Garden was the focal point and city center of old Shanghai. By the end of the Ming Dynasty in 1664, Shanghai had become a major cotton and textile center with a population that would soon reach 200,000. Facing the wall, you will walk to your right, which is south on Renmin Lu, towards the Fuxing Lu tunnel. You will eventually pass Fangbang Lu. While walking, notice the old-style shikumin housing on the left, a dying reminiscence of Shanghai history. At the major intersection of Renmin Lu and Laoximen Lu, you will see the subway station on the right-hand side. Please take the Line 10 subway to the Shanghai Library station stop and exit the station from exit number 2. From the number 2 exit, you will make a left and walk down HuaiHai Lu until you reach Wulumuqi Lu. Turn right on Wulumuqi Lu, and in front of you is 1469 HuaiHai Lu, the American Consulate General. Because it is the American Consulate General, you will not be able to enter the grounds. During the early years of the Qing Dynasty, 1644 to 1911, the British East India Company and its later embodiments were quietly trading in the only accessible port open to the west, Canton, since named Guangzhou. British purchases of tea, silk, and porcelain far outweighed Chinese purchases of wool and spices. So, by the late 18th century, the British had decided to balance the books by slipping into India to swap silver for opium, with which to purchase Chinese goods. The British passion for tea was increasingly matched by China's growing craving for opium, the malicious drug that would virtually single-handedly create latter-day Shanghai and earn the city its bipolar reputation as the splendid Paris of the East and infamous whore of the Orient. From a mercantile point of view, the trade in opium, known as foreign mud in China, was an astonishing success, rapidly filling its way into every nook and cranny of Chinese society. Highly addictive and widely available thanks to the prolific efforts of British traders. The drug, smoked via a pipe, quickly became the drug of choice for all sections of the Chinese public, from the lowliest and most humble to the upper rich elite. The notorious trading company, Jardine Matheson & Co., highly lucrative trade empire, was founded on the Chinese opium business. No other commodity became so uniquely associated with all of Shanghai's spectacular peaks and troughs. Opium became the driving force behind the city's unstoppable rise and its descent into debauchery. From Shanghai's affluent taipans and lucrative hongs to its piercing inequalities, its nasty netherworld of prostitution and vice, violent criminal gangs, corrupt police forces, and the city's cartographic constitution of concessions, settlements, and Chinese districts. The Opium War between Great Britain and China was similarly fought in the drug's name and as a ploy to extract the enterprise that British opium traders had sought from China. The Treaty of Nanking that concluded the First Opium War in 1842 was Shanghai's moment of reckoning, for its signing spelt the death of old Shanghai and the birth of the wild, lawless, and spectacularly prosperous endeavor that would rise up over the Huangpu River.
The use of opium is not a curse, but a comfort to the hard-working Chinese. To many scores of thousands, it has been productive of healthful sustention and enjoyment.
In a statement by Jardine Matheson and Company on the question of opium and their business regarding it. Let us now look at the building located at 1469 HuaiHai Lu, the American Consulate General since 1980. This elegant mansion, featuring long colonnades and loggias, was originally built for a prominent Chinese entrepreneur and Qing government minister, Shang Shu. The American residence was then bought and used by the trading company Jardine Matheson and Company as their manager's house. The Jardine Matheson and Company became the first business to register a building on the Bund in 1843. The business's first premises was situated at 27 Zhongshan Lu, currently where the House of Roosevelt restaurant stands today. Opium, the addictive brownish dream-making drug made from the opium poppy, was one of the driving forces of the good and the bad in Shanghai throughout the 19th century. Trade in opium, which almost turned much of China into a nation of addicts by the early 20th century, was the reason for Shanghai's unstoppable rise and the key to the success of many of the lucrative foreign business houses and affluent rich, powerful foreign businessmen. In those dark days, opium was readily available at tea houses, theaters, entertainment venues, parks, and brothels. The most popular places for consuming opium were the opium dens, where rich and poor Chinese lay on couches next to each other, smoking long pipes of the drug. Because opium is sleep-inducing, most users took the drug lying down. In 1872, it was recorded that there were more than 1,700 opium dens in Shanghai, and a decade later, there were thousands more. One writer observed that there were more stores in Shanghai selling opium than rice, and more opium dens than restaurants. Away from the dens in the city, the most famous business at that time was Jardine Matheson and Company, a trading company founded by two Scottish businessmen in 1832 in Canton, today's Guangzhou, which had the only port in China then open to foreign trade. The company's main business was smuggling. It smuggled opium into China and exported Chinese tea and silk to Britain. By 1841, it had 19 intercontinental clippers and hundreds of smaller boats, which it used for coastal and upriver smuggling. Jardine Matheson and Company was one of the 5 British trading companies that entered Shanghai in 1843. Over the next 10 years, another 36 foreign business houses were established in Shanghai. 22 British, 5 American, 1 French, and 8 Indian companies. Most of the companies made their riches by bringing in opium, and the next half-century saw the opium trade surge madly in Shanghai. In 1852, 1,487 tons of opium were imported through Shanghai, accounting for 42% of China's total opium imports, most of which were carried through the doors of the building you are now facing. 2 decades later, in 1871, opium imports had risen to 3,752 tons in Shanghai, accounting for 68% of the national volume. Opium was the major component of China's imports, accounting for 54% of everything imported to China in 1850 and 48% in 1860. Please make your way to 53 Huangshan Lu. Continue walking down Wulumuqi Lu and you will shortly reach Huangshan Lu. When you arrive at Huangshan Lu, cross the street and make a right, continuing south on Huangshan Lu. Immediately to your left is the Community Church of Shanghai. If you continue walking down the street, you will see an iron gate. Just beside the gate to the right is an iron door. You should be allowed to enter the grounds and enter the main hall of the church. The Treaty of Nanking stipulated, among other things, peace between China and Britain, security and protection of British persons and property, the opening of Canton, Fuzhou, Xiamen, Ningbo, and Shanghai, as well as residence for foreigners in consulates in those cities, all for the purpose of trade, fair import and export tariffs, the possession of Hong Kong, and an indemnity of $18 million. Ironically enough, the Treaty of Opium, legal or otherwise, was never entered into the treaty. Following Great Britain's lead, other countries were quick to join in, including the United States and France. In 1843, the first British consul moved into a local house in the Old Town, signaling a foreign presence in the city that would last for the next 100 years. Of the 5 port cities, Shanghai was the most prosperous due to its superb geographical location, capital edge, and marginal interference from the Chinese government. Trade and businesses boomed, and by 1850 the foreign settlements housed more than 100 merchants, missionaries, and physicians, 3/4 of them British. In 1844, 44 foreign ships made regular trade with China. By 1849, 133 ships lined the shores, and by 1855, 437 foreign ships clogged the ports. Foreigners were divided into 3 concessions. The original British concession more than tripled in size between 1846 and 1848. Bishop William Boone set up a mission in Hangzhou a few years later, which founded the city's American concession, while the French set up their own settlement. From regulation to sanitation, everything in Shanghai was vested in the foreign oligarchies of the Municipal Council and the Conseil d'Administration Municipale, a pattern that was to last as long as the settlements. It was not until the early 1920s that Chinese and Japanese residents, eventually the 2 largest groups in the settlements, were allowed even limited representation on the council. From the start, Shanghai's reason for existence was trade. Still sailing to the west for silks, tea, and porcelain, and 30,000 chests of opium were being delivered into China annually. Soon, great Hong Kong trading houses like Butterfield and Swire and Jardine, Matheson & Co. set up shop, and trade in opium, silk, and tea gradually shifted to textiles, real estate, banking, insurance, and shipping. Banks in particular boomed. Soon, all of China's loans, debts, and insurance payments were funneled through Shanghai. Buying and selling was handled by Chinese middlemen, known as compradors, from the Portuguese, from Canton and Ningbo, who formed a rare link between the Chinese and foreign worlds. The city attracted immigrants and entrepreneurs from across China, and overseas capital and expertise pooled in the burgeoning metropolis. Foreign ideas were similarly imported. By the 1880s, huge numbers of evangelizing American Protestants were saving souls in Shanghai, while the scholarly Jesuits oversaw a flourishing settlement in Shujiawei, at that time called Zigawei. Gradually, sedan cars and single-wheeled carts gave way to rickshaws and carriages, the former imported from Japan in 1874. Shanghai lurched into the modern age with gaslights being introduced in 1865, electricity in 1882, motor cars in 1895, a cinema and an electric tram in 1908, and its first bus in 1922. The Manchu in Beijing gave only quick glances to the growth of Shanghai as all eyes focused on the continual survival of the Qing dynasty, under threat from a barrage of insurgencies that arose from within the rapidly radicalizing confines of the Middle Kingdom.
Every Sunday, we walked to the Shanghai Community Church of the Presbyterian denomination. Charlie and I walked to Sunday school together, and it was one of my favorite things to do. My brothers, sister, and I were all baptized in our church. We would then cut through the cemetery, in which all members of our family were to be buried. There was also a beautiful small chapel on the cemetery grounds. Charlie and I loved to read the names and stories on the gravestones as we passed through this quiet and peaceful place. We talked of an intrusive feeling we had in these mystical surroundings, like we did not belong there just yet. Now is the time we must be strong, by George Van Fleet.
You should now be at 53 Huangshan Lu, standing in front of a red brick Protestant church. In it, you will find rosewood pews and high ceilings. The community church was founded by a group of Americans in 1925. This charming ivy-clad red brick building was built in 1924 and formed the hub of a small but influential American community located in this part of the city. It really did act as a community church, as it was home to the Boy Scouts and the Campfire Girls, as well as a music committee, a recreation committee, and a social committee, in addition to all the other committees that are usually associated with a busy church. The community church generously opened its doors and facilities and served as a proxy campus for Shanghai American School in 1942, when Japanese forces seized control of Shanghai and occupied the Shanghai American School campus. In 1945, when the Japanese forced foreign expatriates who were still left in Shanghai into internment camps, and again in 1949 until 1950. The community church served as Shanghai American School's final resting place in 1950 until SAS reopened in 1980. For the next stop of the tour, you will need to cross Huangshan Lu and continue down the road of the opposite side you are currently standing on until you are standing in front of 10 Huangshan Lu. Exiting the main gate of the church, 10 Huangshan Lu is approximately 100 meters to the left across the road.
The Shanghai American School is the fruition of a dream of faith, hope, and love. It is not strange, therefore, that the school should stand for high ideals and lofty ambitions. Commencement speech of Shanghai American School Principal, Reverend E.C. Lobenstein, 1917. The school will have the best teachers we can get from America. It will be equipped for kindergarten through high school and will be equal to the best in America. Graduates will be able to enter any American college or university. In addition, the American School will be a social center for the American community of Shanghai for meetings, lectures, and night school classes for young Americans who are employed during the day. American children between the ages of 6 and 18 can be left in the boarding school when parents are absent from Shanghai, with the knowledge that they will be well cared for under wholesome home conditions. President of the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, Dr. M.D. Eubank, in a letter dated July 5, 1919, addressed to every American in Shanghai.
Formerly known as the American College, Shanghai American School was first established in 1912 within the Huangpu district to educate the children of American missionaries. The school grew so rapid in size that it moved to this location in the French Concession and opened its doors on September 12, 1923, on what was then called Avenue Pétain. This building was designed by American architect Henry Murphy to resemble the Independence Hall in Philadelphia. The school was built on 15 acres of open, rural farmland surrounded by open fields. At the time, unlike what you see today, there were no shops nearby, no trams, and very little foot or car traffic. To keep up with the rapidly growing number of students, the school was equipped with a dining hall, girls' dormitory, boys' dormitory, an administration building, a principal's residence across the street, a carpentry shop, and a 70-foot tall water tower that served as a popular landmark in the French Concession. After a tumultuous decade of war with the Japanese, followed by war within each other between the nationalists and the communists, the city's harbor was blocked, causing a cease in economic activity. The recent turbulent history resulted in an increase of foreign repatriation, prompting a severe decrease of enrollment at SAS. Due to financial hardship, Shanghai American School administrators slowly leased sections of the school and equipment to local universities and businesses to help pay for their day-to-day expenses, eventually being forced to lease all of the buildings on campus and holding school at the community church across the road. In 1950, the door to SAS had slammed shut. Today, the school houses a naval research facility. Staying on the same side of Huangshan Lu, you will now make your way to Metro Line 10, Shanghai Library Station. To get to the Metro Line 10 station, you will need to walk south on Wulumuqi Lu. Staring at the school, walk towards your left. Walk down Huangshan Lu and make a right turn onto Gaoan Lu. Continue walking on Gaoan Lu and you will reach HuaiHai Middle Road. Make a right on HuaiHai Middle Road and you will see the Metro Line 10 Shanghai Library Station. You will take the Metro Line 10 and exit the UUN Garden Station, which should be the fourth stop. To reach the next destination, take the UUN Garden number 1 exit and turn right, following the gray walking path. At the end of the walking path, you will make a right on Jiujiaochang Lu. Continue walking down Jiujiaochang Lu and make a left on Fangbang Lu. The City God Temple will be on your left. There is a 10 RMB entrance fee and is open between the hours of 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Covered in opium, sucked dry by local militia, crippled by taxes, bullied by foreign interests, and increasingly exposed to Western ideas, Shanghai's population was stirring, and anti-Manchu rebellions began to erupt. The first major rebellion to impact Shanghai was the Taiping, literally Supreme Peace, led by the Hakka visionary Hong Xiuquan. The uprising goes down as the bloodiest in human history, with a tally of 20 million dead. A failed would-be official, Hong Xiuquan claimed to have ascended to heaven and received a new set of internal organs by a golden-bearded Jehovah, which he used to battle the evil spirits of the world with his elder brother, Jesus Christ. Hong's distorted Christian ideology dates from his contact with Christian missionaries in Canton, and an identification of a surname meaning flood with the Old Testament deluge. Sensing himself chosen, Hong saw the Manchu as devils to be exterminated and set about recruiting converts to establish a heavenly kingdom in China. The rebels burst out of Jintian village in Guangxi in 1851, swept through Guizhou, and succeeded in taking Nanjing 3 years later, where they established their heavenly capital. With the Taiping-inspired small sword society entrenched in the old town and fearing the seizure of Shanghai, the foreign residents organized the Shanghai Volunteer Corps, a force that would repeatedly protect the interests of foreigners in Shanghai. The Taiping threatened again in 1860, but were beaten back from Shanghai by the mercenary armies of Frederick Townsend Ward, an American adventurer hired by the Qing government who was eventually killed in Songjiang in 1862. British and Qing forces joined to defeat the rebels, the Europeans preferring to deal with the corrupt and weak Qing government than with the powerful United China governed by the Taiping. The Taiping originally banked on the support of the Western powers, but Westerners were ultimately repelled by Hong's sacrilegious fantasy. As rebellions ravaged the countryside, hundreds of thousands of refugees poured into the safety of Shanghai's concessions, setting up home alongside the foreigners and sparking a real estate boom that spurred on Shanghai's rapid urbanization and made the fortunes of many of Shanghai's entrepreneurs. As imperial control loosened, the encroaching Western powers moved in to pick off China's colonial possessions in Indochina and Korea. National humiliation and a growing xenophobia, partly generated by his distrust of Christian missionaries and their activities, spawned the anti-Western Boxer Rebellion, advocated in its later stages by the Empress Dowager Cixi. The Boxers were overwhelmed by Western and Japanese troops, who went on to sack the Summer Palace in 1900, but not before the embassy quarter in Beijing had been devastated. Empress Cixi and her entourage fled to Xi'an, but returned to Beijing to face massive compensations strapped on the Qing government by the foreign powers. The weakened state of the country, the death of the Empress Dowager, and the legion of conspiring secret societies marked the end of the wobbling Qing dynasty. Shanghai renounced the Qing by declaring independence on the wave of public revolt that swept China in 1911, and all men were instructed to shear off their queues, or pigtails that symbolized subjection to Manchu authority. Despite the momentous end to China's final dynasty, one that had ruled China for almost 250 years, inward-looking Shanghai carried out business as usual, relatively unaffected by the fall of the Qing or the upheavals of World War I. As the rest of China descended into a bedlam of fighting warlords and plunged into darkness, Shanghai emerged as a modern industrial city.
The Shanghai City God Temple compound had been a big attraction for the Liu brothers in their teenage years. I can't miss it in my first homeland trip, Tian'ung told himself. Where is the City God Temple? Tian'ung asked his brothers when they stepped through the front gate of the compound. Demolished during the Cultural Revolution and turned into a bazaar now, responded Tianzhang. But the City God Temple was an important historic relic in Shanghai. Tian'u was flabbergasted. Not in the eyes of the Red Rebels. The statue of the city god was a symbol of superstition, a symbol of old ideology that need be toppled down and smashed to smithereens. The tinge of sarcasm was obvious in Tianji's voice. A 20th century Chinese profile by Margaret Liu Winsai.
Traditionally, many walled cities in ancient China contained a temple dedicated to one or more immortals or gods as a spirit or protector of the city. The city god temple in Shanghai originated as the Jinshan God Temple, dedicated to the spirit of Jinshan, or Gold Mountain, an island off the coast of Shanghai. It was converted into a city god temple in 1403 during the Yongle era of the Ming Dynasty. During the Qing Dynasty, the temple grew in popularity as residents of the old city and nearby areas visited the temple to pray for good fortune and peace. During the Cultural Revolution, the temple was closed down and used for other purposes other than a temple. In 1994, the temple was restored to its former use and was handed over to the Shanghai Taoist Association and made into a Taoist center. A complete restoration of the temple took place between 2005 and 2006. The temple is dedicated to three city gods: Huoguang, Chen Yubua, and Chen Huachen. Huoguang was a famous Han Dynasty chancellor. He is remembered for his role in deposing one young emperor and replacing him with another. Huoguang was the original city god for the county of Shanghai from the Yuan Dynasty. Chen Yubua lived in Shanghai and served in the late Yuan Dynasty civil service. When the Hongwu Emperor founded the Ming Dynasty, he resisted 2 summons to serve at the court. He finally relented and served in various roles, including Chief Imperial Examiner. After his death, he was anointed city god of Shanghai by the Hongwu Emperor. Chen Huacheng was a Qing Dynasty general responsible for the defense of Shanghai during the First Opium War. He vowed to defend the Yangtze to his death and was killed in battle against the British. During the Taiping Rebellion in 1853, the Small Sword Society captured Shanghai and occupied the walled city using the city god temple as its military camp and headquarters. During the Second Sino-Japanese War, from 1937 to 1945, the old Shanghai city was occupied by Japanese troops as they initially left the foreign concessions untouched. As a result, worshippers from the foreign concessions were cut off from the temple. As a response, local merchants built a new temple and attached a marketplace nearby what is today Yan'an Road and Jinling Road, in the then Shanghai International Settlement. The new temple was known as the New City God Temple. After the end of World War II, the New City God Temple diminished in popularity as worshippers shifted back to the Old City God Temple. The New City God Temple and markets surrounding it were demolished in 1972. However, the New City God Temple remains in use, referring to the locality around the site of that temple.